Chaos erupted at the security checkpoint because a highly trained police dog had seemingly gone rogue. Ignoring his handler's desperate commands, the animal launched himself onto the moving luggage belt, sinking his claws into a battered blue suitcase that was seconds away from disappearing into the dark cargo hold. Travelers screamed and scattered, convinced the German Shepherd was attacking a dangerous explosive. He whined, a high-pitched, heartbreaking sound that didn't belong in a security zone, and frantically pawed at the zipper as if begging for help. The officer froze. Realizing his partner wasn't aggressive, he was terrified. With trembling hands, the handler unzipped the bag as the crowd watched in paralyzed silence. They expected drugs. They expected a bomb. But what they saw inside that airless, cramped space made even the toughest officers fall to their knees. The morning sunlight piercing through the station's glass windows could not warm the perpetually tense atmosphere at the international airport. Officer Mark Bennett stood his ground at the checkpoint, his sharp gaze sweeping over the stream of people, but his mind was focused entirely on the end of the leash in his hand. At the other end was Rex, a German shepherd with a coat of jet black mixed with burnt gold. To Mark, Rex was not just a tool for solving crimes. After his wife's death 3 years ago, this intelligent and loyal four-legged creature had pulled him out of the abyss of depression, becoming the anchor holding him to life. Static. Code red. Gate 4. Unattended bag emitting beeps. Lockdown immediately. The radio chatter tore through the air. The security team immediately shifted direction, thundering toward the threat. Mark yanked the leash, shouting out of professional reflex. Let's go, Rex. Move. But Rex didn't budge. His forelegs planted firmly on the floor, claws digging into the tiles like anchors, completely ignoring his master's command. His sensitive ears did not turn toward the sirens at Gate 4, but twitched violently toward baggage carousel 7, a deserted area where the final pieces of luggage were sliding rapidly toward the black rubber flaps leading down to the freezing cargo hold. Rex! Wrong way, Mark shouted, his hand tightening on the leash. Rex let out a strange sound, a noise half whimper, half pleading and full of pain. He spun around, using explosive strength to rip the leash from Mark's grasp. The dog bolted against the flow of the crowd, launching himself over a metal barrier, taller than a man's head. He wasn't attacking a criminal. He was jumping straight onto the moving conveyor belt. His target was an old, blue suitcase drifting just meters from the cargo hold. Entrance. Rex lunged, using his entire body weight to pin the suitcase against the conveyor belt. His claws clawed frantically at the nylon fabric, his teeth clamped tight onto the handle as if to anchor it, preventing it from falling into the dark abyss below. He turned his head to look at Mark, his eyes wide with sheer panic. Kill the belt. Cut the power now. Mark screamed, vaulting over the barrier. His intuition told him that Rex was holding on to something more important than life itself. The conveyor belt jerked and ground to a halt with a piercing screech. Mark rushed over. He didn't wait for the bomb squad. His hands trembled as he grabbed the zipper. He pulled hard. Zip. The lid of the suitcase popped open. The surrounding crowd held its breath. No bomb. No wires. Mark froze. Inside that cramped, airless space were two twin girls, Lily and Rose. They lay curled up, intertwined in a fetal position, motionless. Their skin was purple, their lips pale and bloodless. Rex was right. He had just stopped a coffin from drifting into the jaws of death. Pulse weak, shallow breathing, skin is ice cold. Mark collapsed onto the cold concrete floor, pressing 2 fingers firmly against the neck of the girl named Rose. No response. He switched to Lily. The same. Silence swallowed the once noisy space, leaving only the whistling of the wind through the cracks in the doors and his own ragged breathing. The children had no bleeding wounds, but the danger corroding them from the inside was far more terrifying. A high dose of sedatives combined with oxygen deprivation in a confined space had pushed their fragile bodies into a state of forced hibernation. They were fading away. Medic, I need a medical team here. Immediately, Mark shouted into his radio, his voice cracking with panic. Acute hypothermia. Respiratory failure. Hurry. But the airport was too vast. The curious crowd surrounding them was too dense. The stretchers were still stuck near the escalators hundreds of meters away. Time was not on their side. Mark tore off his police jacket, intending to cover the children, but he froze. Rex had acted one step ahead of him. The massive German shepherd didn't wait for orders. He nudged Mark's hand away with his wet snout, with a startling gentleness that contrasted sharply with his ferocious appearance moments ago. Rex stepped forward. He didn't lick frantically, nor did he paw at them. He slowly lowered his center of gravity, then lay flat on the floor. Rex crawled forward, spreading his forelegs wide, using his entire massive body, weighing over 30 kilograms with thick fur and a body temperature higher than a human's, to cover both children. He transformed himself into a living blanket, a mobile heater enveloping Lily and Rose. His broad chest pressed tight against their frail chests, transferring warmth directly into their hearts and lungs. But warmth wasn't enough. They needed to wake up. Rex began a resuscitation process driven by wild instinct. He used his cold, wet black nose to nudge Rose's cheek hard. Nudge. Stop. Nudge. Stop. A steady, persistent rhythm. When Rose remained motionless, he switched to whining. The sound coming from Rex's throat wasn't a bark, but a low-frequency vibration, resonant and deep, transmitting straight through his chest into the children's bodies. He was trying to stimulate their hearing and sense of touch, forcing their paralyzed nervous systems to respond. He nudged Lily's hand, then turned to lick Rose's eyelids. Vigorously, he would not allow them to sleep. Mark stared at the scene, transfixed. He realized Rex wasn't just keeping them warm. Rex was performing a primitive form of cardiopulmonary resuscitation. With his very presence. Move. Get that animal out of here. The shouting broke the trance. Two paramedics rushed over with a stretcher, sweating profusely. One lunged forward, intending to grab Rex's collar to drag him away to access the victims. Grr. Rex didn't bare his teeth, but he growled, lowering his head, absolutely refusing to leave his post. He clung to the children as if letting go meant life would slip away. Don't touch him. Mark blocked the paramedic, his eyes blazing. Do your job, but let him stay there. He's holding their heat. The paramedic paused for a second, then looked at the monitor of the pulse oximeter clipped hastily onto Rose's finger. The reading was alarmingly low, but it inched up slightly every time Rex nudged the girl. All right, get all three onto the stretcher. Fast. The group rushed off. Rex didn't need a leash. He ran alongside the double stretcher, his nose never leaving the girl's hands. Inside the ambulance, the cramped space was filled with the smell of alcohol, the beeping of machines, and the siren tearing through the wind. The vehicle swayed violently as the driver weaved through rush-hour traffic. Mark sat huddled in the corner, but his eyes were glued to Rex. The dog had jumped onto the bench seat, leaning over the two small bodies lying on the stretcher. The paramedic was trying to insert oxygen tubes and inject an antagonist drug. The situation suddenly turned critical. The pulse on the left is dropping, the paramedic shouted, eyes fixed on the monitor. The green wave on the screen began to flatten out. Heart rate down to 40. Prepare adrenaline. But before the needle could touch the skin, Rex sensed the shift. His sense of smell detected the scent of death seeping through Rose's pores. Rex reared up. He didn't nudge gently anymore. He used his front paw to scratch hard at the mattress right next to Rose's ear, then put his mouth close to her ear and let out a sharp, thunderous bark in the enclosed space. Woof. Rose's body jerked upward in a startle reflex. Heart rate is rising. Up to 60. Up to 70. The paramedic gasped, the syringe hovering in midair. He turned to look at the dog with utter astonishment. Did you see that? Every time she fades, the dog intervenes. He's forcing her brain to function. Rex didn't stop. He licked Lily's palm continuously, then turned to rub his head vigorously against Rose's neck. His burning body heat radiated, fighting the chill of the anesthetic. He whined, the sound louder, more urgent. Like a command, stay here. Do not go. Mark reached out, placing his hand on Rex's head, feeling the dog's body trembling violently. He was pouring every ounce of his life energy into those two souls. Hang in there, Rex. Keep them here, Mark whispered, his voice choked with emotion. The ambulance braked hard in front of the hospital lobby. The rear doors flew open. The emergency trauma team was waiting. As the two stretchers were wheeled down, Rex jumped out immediately, sticking close to the side of the gurney. A doctor on duty ran alongside, listening to the status report while shining a light into Lily's eyes. Pupils are sluggish, but body temperature has recovered significantly. How did you keep them warm in that freezing suitcase? The paramedic from the ambulance, the one who had tried to chase Rex away earlier, pointed at the panting dog beside Mark. Not us. It was him. This dog is a mobile incubator. Without his constant stimulation, the children's nervous systems would have shut down before we could intubate. The doctor looked at Rex, who was now sitting flat on the hospital tiles, tongue lolling out from exhaustion, but eyes still glued to the two stretchers disappearing behind the emergency room doors. He nodded, a nod full of respect. All right, get them to the ICU. And he turned to Mark. Don't lock the dog in the car. Let him stay in the waiting room. He deserves to know the result. Mark sat down next to Rex, wrapping his arms around his four-legged friend's neck. Rex's coat was soaked with sweat and grime, but never had Mark seen him look so beautiful and sacred. The race for life on the streets was over, but the battle to find the perpetrator of this crime had just begun. Mark pulled out his phone, dialing headquarters. His eyes hardened, cold and decisive. It's me. Send me the files on all the victims' relatives. Right now. The airport security control room was submerged in a stifling atmosphere. Dozens of LED screens blinked continuously, replaying every second of the horrific morning. Mark stood with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the main screen. Beside him was Rex, still dirty but having regained his habitual alertness. Though exhausted, Rex's ears pricked up at the clicking of the technician's keyboard. I analyzed the bag at Gate 4. Officer Daniels, head of the bomb squad, threw a file onto the table with a look of disappointment mixed with anger. It was a joke. Or rather, a trap so amateur it's laughable. Mark picked up the photo of the black bag's contents. An alarm clock. Exactly. Daniels nodded, pointing at the picture. An old alarm clock with the snooze button jammed, stuffed in with a pile of metal spoons and forks and old batteries. The beeping sound plus the dense metal image on the scanner fooled us all. The maker isn't a terrorist, Mark. He didn't want to kill anyone at Gate 4. He just wanted us to look in that direction. Mark turned to look at Rex. The dog growled softly in his throat upon hearing Daniel's voice, as if he too felt insulted by the deception. To let the blue suitcase drift through in the opposite direction, Mark whispered, piecing the events together. If Rex hadn't broken orders, that plan would have succeeded perfectly. Who would do that? Daniels asked. Human traffickers? Mafia? This method is too risky and unprofessional. No. Mark shook his head, his eyes icy. A professional wouldn't use a battered old suitcase. A professional wouldn't leave fingerprints all over the handle like this. Show me the camera at the self-check-in counter at 7:15 a.m. The technician typed. The large screen switched views. The stream of people fast-forwarded, then slowed down. A figure appeared. It was a woman. She wore an oversized ash-gray coat, the hood pulled low covering most of her face. She walked with a limp, her shoulders hunched, constantly looking back over her shoulder with the panic of a wounded animal seeking an escape route. She pushed the blue suitcase with both hands, but not in the usual way one pushes luggage. She pushed it gently, carefully, as if pushing a fragile glass cradle. Freeze! Mark shouted. Zoom in on the face. The pixelated image sharpened thanks to processing technology. A gaunt face, eyes sunken deep in dark circles containing a despair that was haunting. She bit her lip until it bled as she placed the suitcase on the conveyor belt. Run facial recognition. Mark ordered. The loading bar was halfway through when Rex suddenly stood up. He approached the screen, sniffing the image of the woman, then let out a short, sharp bark. He recognized her. Beep. The system reported a 98% match. Name, Rebecca Mills. Age, 32. Relation, biological aunt of the victims, sister of Emily Parker. Family. Daniels gasped, stunned. The aunt stuffed her nieces into a suitcase? Is she crazy? Find the motive. Immediately, Mark turned, walking briskly out of the room, Rex close at his heels. I need to know why a woman who looks afraid of her own shadow would dare commit such a cruel act. At the hospital, Emily Parker, the mother of the twins, sat in the waiting room, clutching a handkerchief soaked in tears. When Mark showed her the photo extracted from the camera, Emily didn't scream in anger. She covered her mouth, sobbing uncontrollably, a pain mixed with profound regret. It's her. It's Becca, Emily choked out. I should have known. I shouldn't have forbidden her from seeing the kids. Ms. Emily, please stay calm. Mark sat down opposite her, his voice deep but firm. We need to know the truth. Why did Rebecca do this? Does she have a history of abuse? No, never. Emily shook her head violently. She loves Lily and Rose more than her own life. She thinks they are her children. Mark frowned. What does that mean? Emily took a deep breath, trying to compose herself to recount her family tragedy. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with a weak uterus and couldn't carry a pregnancy. Rebecca volunteered to be my surrogate. She carried the twins for 8.5 months. We had prepared everything: the nursery, clothes, names. But then the accident happened. Mark listened in silence. Rex lay at his feet, whining softly, seeming to sense the sadness permeating the air. A drunk driver crashed into Rebecca's car. Emily's voice broke. Doctors had to perform an emergency C-section to save the babies. Rebecca suffered severe trauma to her abdomen and head. When she woke up, she couldn't accept the truth that she was just the surrogate. She believed they were her biological children. The shock of the sudden loss of the pregnancy sensation combined with mild traumatic brain injury caused her to have delusional disorders. Mark opened the medical file just sent to his tablet. Diagnosis: post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, pseudopsoriasis delusions, delusions of pregnancy/parenthood. The court issued a restraining order 6 months ago because she tried to take them from daycare. Emily continued, tears rolling down her face. But she's not a bad person. She's just trapped in the idea that I'm not good enough to protect them. She always said, I have to take them to a safe place. A safe place. Mark repeated, a chill running down his spine. He remembered the suitcase. Where was she planning to take them? She used to mention an island in the south, where we grew up. A place where no one would bother us. Mark stood up abruptly. The final piece of the puzzle had clicked. Rebecca wasn't a cold-blooded killer trying to dispose of bodies. She was a desperate mother who had lost her way. In her twisted delusion, she believed taking the children away was the only act of protection. What was the liquid found in the babies' stomachs? Mark asked the medical examiner over the radio. Children's cough syrup, the kind containing codeine that causes drowsiness, the doctor's voice replied. The dose was 3 times normal, but not poison. She just wanted them to sleep soundly. Mark grit his teeth. That stupid innocence was more dangerous than malice. Rebecca thought she was lulling her children to sleep for a long trip, completely unaware that the airtight suitcase was a coffin deprived of oxygen. She thought she was saving them, but she was actually killing them. Slowly, Officer Bennett, Daniel's voice came urgently over the radio. We found the suspect's car in the long-term parking lot, but she's not there. The other team's K-9 unit lost her scent at the elevators. She didn't leave the airport, Mark stated firmly. She wouldn't dare leave without the suitcase. She's waiting. Mark looked down at Rex. The dog was standing up, tail straight, nose pointing toward the hospital exit, where the wind blew in carrying the scent of moisture from an approaching storm. She won't go far, Emily called after him, her voice trembling. When we were kids, whenever she was scared, she would seek out high places. She said from there she could see everything coming. High places. Mark looked through the glass toward the airport. The old air traffic control tower, abandoned last year for the new one, stood looming amidst the gray rain like a deadly lighthouse. Rex, Mark called, his voice hardening. Find her, before she does something even more foolish. Rex barked a resonant reply and dashed out the door. He didn't need to smell the suitcase anymore. He smelled the scent of fear rising from that tower. The race was no longer to catch a criminal, but to prevent a double tragedy. Rebecca Mills was not a monster. She was a victim of her own misguided love. And Rex, with his extraordinary empathy, was perhaps the only creature who could end this without firing a single shot. A sudden downpour drenched the airport, turning the giant glass panes into walls of blurred water. The air grew damp and cold. Mark and the SWAT team moved in absolute silence, creeping along the corridor leading to the VIP lounge in the East Wing, an area currently sealed off for renovations. There were no lights. Only faint streaks of illumination reflecting from the distant runway cut through the dusty space, filled with scattered construction materials. The footsteps of the SWAT team, no matter how light, created eerie echoes in the vast emptiness. Rex led the way, but this time he didn't run. He walked cautiously, placing each paw down as silently as a large cat. His nose didn't sniff frantically to seek an enemy, but inhaled gently to locate a shattered soul. Rex stopped in front of a large glass door overlooking the runway, where searchlights swept past in a rhythmic beat. In the darkest corner of the room, behind a pile of sofas covered in white tarps like ghosts, a small figure was huddled. Rebecca Mills. She wasn't standing on the edge of a precipice, nor was she holding a detonator threatening anyone. She sat flat on the cold floor, her back against the glass wall, clutching two tattered teddy bears, one pink, one purple, tightly to her chest. Her head was bowed, disheveled hair hiding her face, but her thin shoulders were shaking with every choked sob. Lullaby, sleep tight, my babies. The broken, off-key lullaby rang out amidst the sound of rain, drumming against the glass, creating a sound so sorrowful it was chilling. Rebecca was singing the bears to sleep, as if they were Lily and Rose. She was completely immersed in her delusional world, where she was still the mother protecting her children from the cruel world outside. Team 1 in position. Team 2 cover. Prepare to neutralize. The SWAT captain's sharp whisper came through Mark's earpiece. Black gun barrels slowly raised, aiming straight at the woman singing the lullaby. Hold, Mark ordered, his voice low but firm, halting any intention to attack. He raised his hand, signaling everyone to lower their weapons. She doesn't have a gun. She's panicked. If you rush in now, she'll shatter. She's a kidnapper, Mark. She almost killed 2 kids, the captain growled quietly. She's a patient, Mark retorted, eyes never leaving Rebecca. And Rex knows how to handle this better than we do. Mark bent down, unclipping the leash from Rex's collar. He looked deep into his 4-legged friend's dark brown eyes, transmitting a silent message. Do what you do best. Rex understood. He didn't need the command attack. He knew what he needed to do. The dog stepped out of the shadows, entering the dim streak of light where Rebecca sat. The sound of his claws clicking lightly on the tiles startled Rebecca. Her head snapped up. Her sunken eyes went wide, filled with terror as she saw the massive silhouette of the beast approaching. No, don't come here, Rebecca screamed, her voice hoarse and off-pitch. She curled into a ball, squeezing the teddy bears to her chest as a final shield. Don't take my babies. You can't take them. They are mine. She flailed around, looking for something to defend herself with, but there was nothing but dust. Fear turned into agitation. She began to scream, kicking her legs wildly in front of her. Stay away, you devils. Emily isn't worthy. I am their mother. The SWAT team behind Mark was tense. One soldier had his finger on the trigger of a taser. But Rex didn't back down. He didn't growl back either. Rex stopped about 2 meters from Rebecca. He lowered his head, sniffing a small object lying neglected on the floor, a tiny pink canvas shoe with a bow, which had fallen from Rebecca's pocket during her struggle with madness. It was Rose's shoe. Rex gently picked up the shoe in his mouth. He took one more step, ignoring Rebecca's screaming. He placed the shoe down right in front of her toes. That action stunned Rebecca. The scream died in her throat. She stared at the tiny shoe lying forlornly on the floor, then looked up into Rex's eyes. Rex didn't look at her like an enemy. He didn't look at her like prey. His brown eyes were lowered, sad and understanding. He slowly lowered his front legs, then his hind legs, lying flat on the floor in a posture of total submission. He rested his chin on his front paws, letting out a soft whimper, the same sound he had used to wake the children in the ambulance. It was the sound of comfort. The room fell silent. Rebecca tremblingly reached out, touching the shoe. Memories came flooding back like a waterfall. She remembered the feeling of carrying the 8-month belly, the gentle kicks of the fetus. And she remembered the moment she stuffed 2 tiny, warm bodies into that cold, dark suitcase. What have I done? Rebecca whispered, her voice shattering. I put them in there. They couldn't breathe. I suffocated them. The wall of delusion crumbled. The brutal truth came crashing down, crushing her. Rebecca dropped the 2 teddy bears, clutching her head. and burst into uncontrollable sobs. The crying was no longer the screaming of a madwoman, but the mournful wail of a person who just realized she almost became the murderer of the very people she loved most. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Rex crawled forward. He didn't hesitate. He pressed his warm fur against Rebecca. He licked her trembling hand gently, licking away the salty tears falling onto the floor. Rebecca didn't push him away. She wrapped her arms around the dog's neck, burying her face in his thick fur and weeping. She found in this strange animal a forgiveness she knew she didn't deserve from humans. Rex sat still, letting the poor woman pour out all her pain and regret onto his shoulders. Mark signaled the SWAT team to lower their guns completely. He stepped out of the shadows, walking slowly toward them. He didn't pull out handcuffs immediately. He knelt down beside them, placing a hand on Rebecca's shoulder. "Rebecca," Mark said softly. "Lily and Rose are okay. They are waiting at the hospital. You didn't kill them. Rex saved them." Rebecca raised her head, bloodshot eyes looking at Mark, then down at Rex. He saved my babies?" "That's right." Mark nodded. "And now, let us help you. You need treatment, Rebecca. Not prison, but a hospital." Rebecca nodded weakly, releasing her hold on Rex's neck. She held out both hands, not to resist, but to surrender. Mark gently locked the handcuffs on her wrists, but his movements weren't those of an arrest, but rather like helping an injured person stand up. As Mark led Rebecca toward the door, she looked back at Rex one last time. The dog still sat there, beside the two teddy bears and the small shoe, his tail wagging a gentle goodbye. The storm outside hadn't ceased, but the storm within that woman's heart had begun to dissipate. No shots were fired, no blood was spilled. Only the silence of compassion had conquered madness. Rex stood up, picked up Rose's small shoe, and quietly followed his master, completing the mission of a silent guardian angel. Dawn arrived bringing a gentle amber light, dispelling the gloomy and cold night that had blanketed the city. In the pediatric ICU, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and the steady beeping of machines began to thin out, giving way to the sounds of reviving life. In room 302, Emily Parker sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes puffy from crying all night, but shining with intense hope. On the large white bed, two little angels, Lily and Rose, lay side by side. The oxygen tubes had been removed, replaced by gentle nebulizer masks. The effects of the anesthesia were fading, bit by bit returning consciousness to the two tiny bodies. A soft shifting sound was heard. Emily held her breath, leaning forward. Lily's tiny hand moved, her delicate fingers grasping in the air as if searching for an anchor. And then, the little girl's eyes slowly opened. At the same time, Rose also stirred. Like an invisible link between twins, when one woke, the other was roused. Two pairs of big, round eyes looked bewildered at the white ceiling, then at their mother's tear-streaked face. "Mommy's here. Mommy's here, babies," Emily whispered, her voice breaking, reaching out to stroke the still pale cheeks of her two children. But the children's reaction was not a smile. The horrific memory of darkness, of the suffocating tightness in the suitcase, seemed to still haunt their fragile subconscious. When they realized they were in a strange place, full of wires and beeping machines, panic exploded. "Wah! Wah!" Lily screamed, a piercing cry that tore at the heart. Rose began to wail along with her. The two children curling up, pushing their mother away, terrified. The heart rates on the monitors skyrocketed to alarm levels. Duty nurses rushed into the room. "They are agitated. Heart rates are too fast," a nurse said anxiously. "We might have to administer a mild sedative." No more needles. My babies have had enough drugs," Emily shouted, trying to hug her children to calm them, but it was hopeless. The two children struggled, their crying growing louder, echoing down the quiet hallway. Just then, the hospital room door creaked open. Not a doctor, not a nurse. A large head, full of fur with perked-up ears, poked in. "Rex." Mark stood behind, holding the leash lightly, intending to pull Rex back for fear of disturbing them. But Rex had already squeezed through the narrow gap, entering the room with a strange confidence. He didn't bark. He simply emitted a familiar sound. "Oh, woo woof." A low, warm whimper rang out. A miracle happened. The moment that sound touched the children's ears, the screaming stopped dead as if someone had flipped a switch. Lily fell silent, tear-filled, eyes opening wide, staring at the door. Rose also stopped struggling, turning her head to find the source of the sound. It was the sound that had saved them in the darkness. It was the only sound they heard as they drifted into deep sleep. It was the call of safety. Rex approached the bed. He didn't jump up. He walked on tiptoes, so gently he didn't make a sound. When he reached the edge of the bed, Rex slowly lifted his two front paws, placing them carefully on the white sheet, avoiding the 4 lines. He brought his wet, jet-black nose close to Lily's face, sniffed gently, then extended his tongue to lick a soft line up the girl's tear-soaked cheek. Then he turned to do the same to Rose. The 2 children lay perfectly still, eyes glued to the giant creature in front of them. Fear vanished completely, replaced by curiosity and absolute trust. "Doggy, doggy," Lily babbled, her voice weak but clear. Rose reached out her tiny hand, fingers wrapping tightly around the thick fur at Rex's neck. Lily did the same, hugging one of the dog's ears. The 2 children clung to Rex like a lifebuoy in the middle of the ocean. Rex stood still as a statue, his tail wagging gently, rhythmically like a pendulum. He half closed his eyes, enjoying the clumsy caresses of the children, occasionally nudging his head into their palms to respond. The room fell silent. The nurses stood rooted to the spot, some covering their mouths to suppress sobs of emotion. Emily rested her head on the edge of the bed, shoulders shaking, but this time they were tears of complete happiness. Mark stood silently, outside the glass window, observing it all. He felt his chest tighten, a warm sensation seeping into the place that had been a deep wound since his wife's death. He saw Rex, not as a K-9 weapon with sharp teeth, but as a healing soul. Rex hadn't just saved the children from physical death, he was now saving their spirits from early childhood trauma. "You have an amazing partner, Officer Bennett," an old doctor standing next to Mark whispered, taking off his glasses to wipe them. "I've been in this profession for 40 years, and I've never seen a medicine act as fast and powerfully as this." "Dog." Mark smiled, a rare but radiant smile. "He's not medicine, doctor. He's Rex." Inside the room, after a while of gentle play, fatigue overtook the children again. Lily and Rose's eyelids began to droop, but this time they didn't fight sleep. They closed their eyes, hands still gripping Rex's fur, their breathing becoming steady and peaceful. Rex sensed that the children's breathing had stabilized. He slowly lowered his front paws to the floor. He didn't leave. He walked around to the foot of the bed, curled up on the rug right there. He rested his chin on his paws, eyes half closed, but ears perked up, directed toward the 2 little angels sleeping soundly. He was on guard. He was protecting their dreams from any nightmare that dared to approach. Emily pulled the blanket over her children, then tiptoed to the door. She walked up to Mark, eyes red but filled with gratitude. She took the police officer's rough hand. "Thank you, Officer Bennett. Thank you for not giving up." Mark shook his head slightly. "Don't thank me, Emily. I just hold the leash." He nodded toward the dog sleeping in the room. "He's the hero." Emily looked inside, smiling through tears. She took a small piece of paper from her pocket, folded carefully in 4. It was a drawing scribbled in crayon that she found in Lily's coat pocket when changing her clothes. The picture showed 2 little girls holding hands, and beside them was a large black-brown shape with 4 legs. Lily drew this before she was kidnapped. Emily choked up. She always dreamed of having a dog to protect her, and now that wish has come true in the most miraculous way. Mark took the drawing, feeling a lump in his throat. He carefully folded it, placing it in his breast pocket, right next to his heart. "We will handle all legal procedures for Rebecca," Mark said, his voice lowering. "She will be transferred to a forensic psychiatric facility for treatment. The court will consider mitigating circumstances regarding her mental state." Emily nodded. "That's best for her. And for us." The sun had risen high, shining through the large window, spreading a layer of golden brilliance over the floor, the white bed, and Rex's sleek fur. The scene was as beautiful as a holy painting, where the boundaries between species were erased, leaving only pure love. Mark gently closed the hospital room door, leaving the quiet space for the 3 children to rest. He turned and walked down the long hospital corridor. His steps felt light. For the first time in years, he felt he had truly completed a mission fully. Not because he caught a criminal, but because he had protected the world's innocence. And he knew, when Rex woke up, he would wag his tail, ready for a new day, a new mission, with a brave heart always beating the rhythm of unconditional compassion.